Hello guys, thank you so much for joining the webinar today. Today we will give you an introduction over how to connect your your gateways to PBX and how to route calls between your PBX and gateways. As a matter of fact, most of you guys knows that gateways are usually used to expand interfaces for your telephone system. That is to say, when your PBX don't have enough interfaces, but for example, you have to connect like 20 to 30 analog phones, or you need like 2 or 3 ports for E1 lines, then of course your PBX won't have enough interfaces on its body. So you can actually use gateways as a way to add more interfaces to those to your system. I'd like to firstly take just a few minutes to explain about how these things, how the gateway works. But I believe most of you guys already know that. As you can see, all of our gateways are can realize transcode between SIP and other signals. For example, with analog, with E1, with BRI, or with GSM. So that means the gateway will realize the transcode and transfer whatever transfer the analog signal to SIP data packages and send it to PBX. So this is exactly why it is called gateways, and we take advantage of this feature to realize interface expansion. So this is why we use gateways. I believe most of you guys already know that. So we have, as you can see here, 5 kinds of gateways. The first one is TA, that's our analog gateways that comes with FXS ports for analog phones, or FXO port for your CO lines or analog lines from the service provider. And then we have TE gateways, that is our PRI gateways. You will get E1 line connected to this PBX and have that integrated to your PBX. And of course we have TB gateways, that is for BRI lines, and we have our TG gateways, that's that's for SIM cards actually. So you can actually integrate mobile trunks to your PBXs. So we have so many kinds of gateways, but in fact only FXS ports TA gateways are for extra extensions or extra phones, terminals, and all other kinds of gateways, as you can see here, is actually for extra lines or extra trunks for service providers. So we will divide those gateways into 2 parts and explain to you how you set up your gateways so you can work, so you can configure the gateways together with your S-Series PBX. Okay, so the first thing you might want to do is the physical connection. We won't spend too much time talking about this. Basically, whatever kind of the gateway you have is, but you can simply have the lines or the terminals connected to the corresponding ports on the one side, and have the LAN port on your gateways to connect it to the local network where you can locate your IPPBX and have them connected and access to the same local network. So this is the physical connection. This is pretty easy, and the hard part is the configuration part, and that's what we are going to be mainly focused on today. Okay, now let's get into the web GUI. All right, here we go. So first of all, let's talk about TA gateways that comes with FXS ports. So the gateways that you use basically to connect analog phones. And well, actually the intercommunicate between an FXS ports gateways and a PBX is quite simple, because all phones that is connected to those TA gateways can be directly auto-provisioned to the PBX to each individual extension that you want. So it will be actually just like how you register, you register a IP phones directly to the PBX. Well, I will still show you this here in auto provision, and you will see our gateways. Well, in most cases, auto provision is for when you need to register IP phones to the extensions. But now we can totally use auto provision to register your the phones on your analog PBX, your analog gateways, your TA gateways to this PBX. Okay, so in manufacture, you can tell that we have bunch of phones here, but in manufacturers you have Yeastar, and in models you will see the model of each of those gateways. Only FXS ports gateways can be detected and shown in this list. Well, as you can see, here we have all the gateways that is physically connected but not configured. So all we need to do here is click edit, just like when we are provision and a normal phone, here in extensions, as you can see, because this is a TA200, that means we have 2 analog ports on this gateway. So we can actually assign the extension number to each of the port. So this way, whatever analog phone you have on this port will be extension 1007, and in the port 2, the one on the port 2 will be extension 1015. So this way you click save and your provision is done. You can actually register those 2 phones to your PBX directly as an extension. You don't have to do anything else. It will work just like a normal extension. You don't even have to open up the web GUI, the web GUI of this very gateway. Well, you can actually identify the gateway by its model, its IP address, and of course its MAC address. So with those 3 parameters, you won't have it wrong. Okay. So this is our how to intercommunicate with a normal gateway. This is actually quite simple. But now we will be talking about how do you connect and intercommunicate those gateways that is used to connect trunks. So with those kind of gateways, you will have to you want to use them to receive phone calls from the trunks and send it accordingly to your PBX. And of course, when you make outbound calls through those trunks, you hope your extensions, the call made by those extensions can be sent out directly to those PBXs. So this is what we are going to do here. Okay, firstly, we need to go to in this PBX. Okay, as you can see here in these trunks, we can totally create a trunk, a VoIP trunk, especially for the analog gateway. And here we choose peer trunk. So here in the provider name, we would want to put in the name. They would want to put in a name for us, so we can identify this. Identify what is this trunk for when we are managing the system. So here I put in TA410. This is our analog PBX, analog gateways that comes with 4 FXO ports. So after that, we put in the host name IP, so the IP address of this gateway. Okay, so this is it. Okay, and in domain we just copy the IP address. That'll be perfectly fine, and the caller ID number and the caller ID name, we can totally ignore that. There won't be any problem at all. But if we want, well, of course we can put in a caller ID name that show the identity of the analog gateways. So whenever a call was made through here, you will show its caller ID. It will show the number of this trunks or the caller ID name. So you know, the callees, the extensions who receive the calls can know, okay, this call is coming from the gateway. If it's necessary, you can totally do that. Okay, all we need to do here now is to click save, and now we have this trunk created without any problem at all. Okay, now we need to go to the web GUI of this very gateway to finish up the rest of the configurations, so we can officially build the connection. Okay, here we go. Here we are in the web GUI of our TA410. This is our analog PBXs with analog gateways with 4 FXO ports. So first thing we need to do here is to realize the connection between this gateway and the PBX. Well, we have already made a peer trunk on the PBX that will point to this gateway. And so we have to build a connection here in the gateway and point it back to the PBX, so the mutual connection can be created. So what we need to do here is we get into gateway, and here we have VoIP server settings. So the VoIP server we have built in right here will be the connection we have with the PBX. As you can see here, this is actually quite simple. You can change the name so you can identify the connection as well. So you can put in PBX here if you want, but also you can also keep the default name if you think that suits you. And here we have we choose what type of connection do we have. Well, mainly we can choose SIP, of course. And here we have enable register. Well, as you can see here, if this option is not enabled, the port will be registered as a service provider trunk to the VoIP server. So the way we create is build a mutual VoIP trunk on both sides so we can have the mutual connection. So here we definitely would want to unclick this, unclick this, so this way the register won't be enabled, and we can build a mutual connection both with trunks. So this gateway will also be a trunk to the PBX. I hope you can understand that. And here all we need to do is to put in the IP address of the PBX that we want that we have just configured. And in domain we copy the IP address, and that's it. So here, this way, just as simple as this, we have our server information put in here. The mutual connection will be just created very easily. But after that, we will want to set the dial pattern template. So the dial pattern here is just like the dial pattern you have in the outbound calls. It defines what kind of calls that you can make out through the PBX. Well, in our gateways, only the number style that match the dial pattern can go through the outbound routes, and this is exactly like this. Only the number style that match the dial patterns can be sent out through the CO lines. So here you can put in the dial pattern. It's just the same as the PBX. It's this basic asterisk settings. I believe most of you guys are pretty familiar with that. In dial patterns, you put in the numbers rules. Like for example, you want all numbers sent out has to be start with a 9, so you put in a 9 here. And if there are no other rules, you put in a dot. Just the example, okay. Here, so in Stripe, you define how many digits do you want to delete before the call is sent out. And here in prepend, you define what numbers do you want to add in front of the number dialed before the call was sent out. So Stripe is the number that will be deleted, and the prepend will be the numbers that will be added. So yeah, this is just as I have said, as the same as the dial patterns in our outbound route settings. So okay, we don't have to waste too much time on this. Once we are done with it, we click save, and it will be working perfectly. Okay, now we need to go to the port settings to define the connection. To define how we like to route calls, because as you can see here, we have built, as I have said, the mutual channels between the PBXs and gateways. But now we need to tell the system how we like them to manage phone calls for they to work. So here we have 4 serial lists. Let's take the first port as an example. So here in the first port, the first couple of parameters, you can just leave it like this way. We have caller name, the port name which will be shown in this with GUI, and the caller ID, of course, it will be also shown for when any calls come in from this line. And of course, down here we need to reinsure the connection between this port and the PBX. So here in primary server, we choose the PBX that we have just created. So this is the VoIP server number 1. And of course, we can also point VoIP server number 2 as a failover server here. So that means we can actually connect one gateway to multiple PBX, or multiple gateways to one PBX. Both will work. So we can actually build a pretty complicated telephone system with those things, but we won't be getting too much in this. Okay, so here we have username and the password. As I have shown you, what we built here is a mutual trunk, so we don't actually have to register this gateway or this line specifically to the PBX as an extension. This way, we don't have to. We can just ignore the username and password settings here. We just choose the server, and it will be just fine. And then we can define how we like to route calls. So here we have simple mode. In simple mode, the call will go right through. But we don't want to do that. We want to show you everything that we have here. So here we have inbound caller patterns. So that means all the phone calls made from the port, from the SL lines, will be sent out to the PBX. And here we can put in a caller pattern here to define to limit the call sending to only specific types of phone calls. So let's it's just an example here. So if we put in like this, that means only this when this number calls through this port number 1, will it send the call directly to the PBX. Otherwise, if other number calls, it won't do that. And of course, we can make it less specific, or we can put in 6 dot. That means all numbers that starts with the 6, if any number that starts with the 6 make a call to this trunk, then this call will be sent directly to the PBX. But we don't have to set. It's not necessary. We don't have to set anything here. If we leave it in blank, that means there are no limitation. All calls all calls sent will be just resent to the PBX. And of course, we can choose to disable or enable callbacks if we are going to use the trunk we have on the gateways for callback. We can totally enable this. And here we have incoming call processing. So incoming call processing here, of course, as you can see, we can have hotlines. So if we have hotlines, that means the down number here, the dial number here will be sent directly. So you don't. So the dial patterns, as you can see here, will be ignored. The call will be processed directly. But here we can also enable two-stage dial. That means if someone use the trunk to call into the PBX, so they can use the trunk on the PBX to make outbound calls. They can certainly enable two-stage dial. That means once they are in the PBX, the system will through the analog trunks, the system will require them to dial again the real number, and then that call will be sent out through a trunk that is directly connected to the PBX. That is for when you people. That is mostly for a remote working, for remote working scenarios. And here we can enable the dial patterns and to define how do we want to process the recent calls. Okay, and here we have IP to port. We still don't want to enable the simple mode. Okay, so the IP to port actually defines how we want to make outbound calls from the PBX to the trunks that is connected to this gateway. So this is IP to port. Okay, here we have inbound caller patterns, DID numbers, DID associated number. Okay, let's so firstly we have inbound caller patterns. That means only the numbers dialed from the PBX to this gateway that match this caller pattern right here will be processed. Otherwise, this call won't be processed and will be just dropped. And here we have DIDs. DID setting right here actually is used not for PBX to gateways, but for SIP trunks to the PBX. That means sometimes you use this gateway not only to expand interfaces for your PBX system, to expand FXO port for your system. Sometimes, for example, you have an traditional analog PBX which don't comes with any SIP features. You want SIP trunks. Well, you can totally use this this gateway as a way to interconnect your SIP trunks to your analog system, analog PBX. So you can have the trunks is connected to this PBX, and this PBX will convert SIP to analog, and then you use analog lines to connect your your traditional PBX to this gateway. So this will be totally other way around, and we're not going to talking too much about this, because what we are going to be talking about is routing between our Yeastar PBX and our Yeastar gateways. But DID number is used in these scenarios, and that's quite natural. If you have questions, specific doubts about this, and if this if you have a lot of cases like this, like you have SIP trunks with analog PBXs, of course we will have more webinars in the future, and you will actually see what do we do there. Okay, and here we have incoming calls processing. So that means here we define how we like to process the calls. So basically this is how we manage calls from PBX to gateways and from gateways to PBXs. This is only analog PBXs, but we would certainly talking about other PBX. Now let's go to web GUI of some of our other other gateways to show you how to configure those kinds of gateways. Let's take a GSM gateway as an example. So this is the gateways where you insert SIM cards and have your PBX connected to the mobile network. Okay, so here in gateways, first thing we need to do is still build VoIP trunks for the gateway for the PBXs. So we need to add a VoIP trunk, and in trunk type we put in service provider, and here we put in the IP address of the PBX, and we can have the connection correctly. But here we have a few other options I will explain to you. So firstly, we have account and we have trunk. So apparently account are for analog phones. So you can actually have analog phones on the connected to the gateways, and use this analog phones to make calls through the SIM cards in the TG gateways, and of course receive phone calls from those SIM cards you have inserted in the in the GSM gateways. So this is for analog phones, and here we have trunks. Trunks are for SIP trunks. So if you have actual SIP trunks, and for when you register this gateway to a PBX as an SIP extension, you can also use this method to realize the connection. But we don't suggest that you do this. We suggest you use a peer trunk. That's what we have been talking about here today. We choose service provider, put in the IP address. So this gateway will also be a VoIP trunk to the PBX, and the operation on the PBX side is totally the same. You create an VoIP trunk, you choose peer trunk, you put in the IP address of this gateway, and that's it. Pretty simple. Okay, we have the service provider connected. Now all we need to do is to define how we like to make and receive phone calls. So here we can actually create a route list. So here we have simple mode. We do not want to do that. So here we have route name. You can name it whatever you can name it as you like, and just for you to identify this route rules. And here we have call source. So this actually mobile to IP. This is very easy to understand. So the call will be made from the SIM trunk, from the SIM card, and you will want to send the calls you received by the SIM card and process it to the PBX. So mobile, the call source, you can choose a SIM card that you have inserted. We have four. This is a TG400, so we have 4 SIM card slots. You can choose one as the call resource. So this rule is for how we managing calls received by this through this SIM card. And here we'll have inbound caller patterns. Yes, this is exactly the same as the inbound caller patterns we have in the TA gateway and in your inbound caller patterns, caller ID patterns in your PBX as well. So that defines what kinds of calls can come in, and if the patterns do not match, it will be dropped automatically. And here we have incoming calls processing, so that defines how you send the call to the PBXs. So here we have call destination. You choose the VoIP trunk that you have just connected, that you have just created for the PBX actually. And of course, if you want to enable hotlines, then the numbers will be ignored and sent directly to the PBX. But it only applies to SIP trunks, so we don't have to worry too much about those things. So once we have this defined, this call will be sent to the PBX, and we received by this call, and you can and on the PBX side you can do incoming calls settings for this incoming call settings to furtherly process its call. Perhaps you want the callers to hear IVR, so you can set IVR. But we will be on that later. And so here we also have IP to mobile, And IP2 mobile actually define how we make outbound calls from the PBX to the gateway. Okay, here we have simple mode, no. And we define the call source, so we find the SIP trunk that we have just created that is pointed to the PBX. And we choose a SIM card for the calls to come out. And of course, we have outbound dial patterns, so only the numbers that match this pattern will be sent out. Okay, so till now, I think you pretty much get the concept here. All we need, what our suggestion will be, you create a mutual trunk connection or a peer-to-peer trunk connection on both sides. So the connection here, so the calls will have a channel to go through the two equipments, the PBX and the gateways. And after that, all we need to do is to create a route from the PBX to the from the PBX to the gateways, and from the gateway to the PBX on the gateway side. But it's not finished. We still need to go back to the PBX side to finish up this configuration. Otherwise, the calls will not be managed correctly. Here we have. Let's get back to the PBX. And actually, as you're already seeing here, we have finished the configuration on the gateway side, but we still need to make inbound calls and outbound calls routes for the gateways. So we have already made a trunk for the gateways in the PBX, that is for our TA410. So here in the call routing rules, we firstly make outbound calls routes and inbound, and we firstly made outbound call routes especially for the gateway. So here we have TA410. 410. So here in the trunk list, we choose the TA410. Okay, we choose it right here, and we have dial patterns here. It's just like when you set dial patterns for usually for normal SIP for usual SIP out trunks. So we won't be talking about this too much. And here we define the extensions that is allowed to use to use the trunks in this gateway to make outbound calls. Here we include all extensions, but of course you can choose if you can pick some of those and if it's necessary. So with these routes, we have ensure how we send calls from the PBX to the gateways, and of course this will also be working together with the configurations we already have on the gateway side, from gateway to from PBX to gateway. And here we are going to also define how we like to receive the calls that we receive that is sent from the PBX. So here we have we also the TA410, and in trunks we define TA410. Okay, so the caller DID patterns and the caller ID patterns can remain the same. If it's necessary, you can put parameters in here, and it will work, and the system will work accordingly. So this will be working as a the caller ID pattern here will work pretty much as a screen system, which will drop all the calls that do not match the pattern you set here. Okay, I think already know it pretty well if you have experience on setting PBX call routing rules. So here in destination, we can put in any destination you want. As a matter of fact, these trunks are connected to the outside public telephone system. So you can just treat it like a normal trunk that is connected directly to the PBX and choose an IVR as this is the most popular choice. So let's make a conclusion. Our suggestion is that when you register, when you have a TA gateway that comes with FXS ports for you to connect analog phones, you don't have to do many things. All you need to do is to realize you connect the PBX and the gateways into the same local network. The PBX will find out the gateways automatically, and you can do auto provision directly to the phones that is connected on the gateway. So that is just like you auto provision SIP phones IP phones connect to your PBX. That's pretty simple. And when you are using gateways that support trunks for your PBXs, you will have to firstly build a mutual VoIP trunks on both sides, so they will point to each other and have both channels for calls from both sides. So this is the step one, and step two is to build call routing rules on both sides. So the calls that is received by the trunks on the gateways can be sent perfectly to the PBX and managed according to the rules you have in the PBX. And also, when it also works the same way when you make outbound calls. So you will have to firstly set outbound calls on the PBX, so you can actually send the calls from PBX to gateways. And on the gateway side, you need to set up also rules from IP to the interface. So this way, this call can be sent directly to the service provider as you want. Okay, this is actually quite simple. This is how you realize connection between your gateways and your PBXs. But as I have said, there are other ways, other options. But we consider this as the most suggested, most convenient, and most straightforward one. So we suggest this for you. But as you know, gateways can be pretty versatile. There are a lot of ways to use a gateway. We will probably have more training on that in the future, and you can check www.yeastar.com/webinars to see our newest update for upcoming webinars. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you so much for your participation. If you have any questions, any doubts, please give me a reply. Please let me know through the chatting panel, and I will give you an answer right away. Okay, thank you.